Alright, previously we've finished up with the tooltip customization. In this video, we will go through the series configuration for the time series visual. As always, within the sample report, you already have some pre-configured variations of the chart that you can play around with. But we're going to be going into the training view and actually building them from scratch. So first things first, we're going to add an instance of the time series visual. We're going to resize the visual, and we're going to also disable the background plus the title, because we're not going to be using those. As for the visual setup itself, we're going to be using new date in our date field, and then we're going to be using payout as series 1, budget in series 2, and name in series 3. Now for name, we're also going to adjust the aggregation to show us count, and we're also going to rename the column into the number of employees. So number of employees. There we go. Now going into the formatting option, one of the things that you can see here is that every single series that I added to the visual has their own configuration tab. The time series visual supports up to 12 different series at a given time. So this allows you to have a lot of customization for those independently. Now, once we open up one of the configuration tabs, you can see that the things that you can adjust here are display names, types, which is actually one of the most powerful features for the visual. We allow you to customize each individual series to be represented as either a column, line, or an area. Now, going forward, you can also enable value labels. You can play around with some additional settings for each of the chart types. So for example, for column, you have width percentages, outline, and fill color settings. You can also adjust the stacks, clusters, the value axis, display order for that particular series, no data policy, and some additional toggles that we're going to go through in just a minute. Now, what we're going to be doing with this situation is that we're going to actually start using all three chart types. So series 1, which is the payout, we're not going to touch. We're going to leave it as is. As for series 2, which is our budget, we're going to go and change the chart type into an area. Now, to further enhance it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it also to be a stepped area. And instead of having a full color opacity for the fill, I'm going to readjust it to be something like 20%. Right now, one of the things that kind of is misleading is that the area is in front of the columns. So it's still kind of hard to properly read the colors. So what we're going to do is just readjust the display order and bring the area in the back. Now, the next series that we're going to be customizing is going to be series 3. The reason we're going to be customizing this is because it's number of employees. And since number of employees only goes into hundreds, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to keep it on the same value axis as the first two series, because those go into millions. So we're going to scroll down a bit more. And first thing that we're going to change is we're going to assign it to a secondary y-axis. There we go. Now, afterwards, we're also going to adjust the chart type. We're going to choose this one to be a line. There we go. We can also increase the thickness so it's a little bit more prominent. And we're also going to be adding some markers. Just like that. So the other thing that's really left here is we also need to enable the secondary y-axis, because otherwise having only one y-axis and having series on both of them doesn't really make a lot of sense. So just scroll up, find secondary y-axis setting right here and enable that. There we go. Now, what you can see here is essentially that I'm using just 3 different series, and each of them is using a separate chart type. To further enhance the visual, you can also work with multiple visuals or multiple series on the same chart type. For example, columns, which allows you to create either stacked or clustered columns. Now, if we go back to the main page right here, you can see that the first option that I have provided here is something that we just built. The other option that you can see here is a combination where I'm using stacks and clusters. Now, regarding the stacks, you can watch more information regarding it in one of the previous videos where we were covering stacking and padding customization. The last thing that I wanted to cover regarding the series configuration is actually going to be a setting called no data policy. So we're going to quickly go here and click on one of the charts. Once we open up the formatting options for it, I'm going to go to series customization right here, scroll down to the bottom, and here we have a setting called no data policy. And once we click on it, we actually have 3 different modes that we can choose between: join, zero, or skip. And here are all 3 visible in real life. So what they're doing differently. Join allows you to essentially extend the line from one point to another, disregarding the fact that you don't have values at any given time. In this case, you can see, for example, January 3rd doesn't have any value, but the line is being extended from the 2nd to the 4th of January. Now, if we go to the next one, which is the skip, you can see what the chart does now is it physically removes this series from the display for points where you don't have any data. And the last option is 0. What it does is it forces the visual to go through the 0 value to essentially never end the chart so you can follow through and see which days did not have any additional results. Now, if we go into the formatting options, the only last thing that we really haven't covered are going to be these 3 toggles right here. So for that one, let's go back to the training view to the chart that we built. And what we're going to be doing here is we're also going to be enabling legends. So right here, and we're also going to place them on the left-hand side. There we go. In this case, let's just also resize the chart just a little bit. Now, when we go to the series configuration right here, in this case, we're going to open series 3. Scroll down to the bottom, and here you have 3 different toggles. Show in Legends, enabled by default, or Show in Tooltips. Show in Legends and Tooltip essentially allow you to hide a series as a reference point in one of the elements. Either it's the Legends or it's the Tooltip. So for example, if I disable it from the Legends, you can see number of employees doesn't show up anymore. But if I hover over the chart, I can still see the series and I can see the reference in the Tooltip. Now, if I re-enable it but disable it from the Tooltip, it's the reverse. I have number of employees right here in the Legends, but when I hover over the chart, I don't see a reference for it in the Tooltip. So this allows you to have some also unique use cases for the information that you want to display. Now, the last setting that we have here is called Enabled by Default. What it essentially does is it allows the series to be loaded on the initial chart load. For example, if I disable number of employees being loaded up on default, whenever I switch between the pages, so for example, I'm going to go to this tab and go back to the training view, you can see that 2 series are being loaded up, payout and budget. But the number of employees is still in the Legends and it's grayed out. So in case I want to enable it, all I have to do is just simply click on it. What this essentially allows you to do is to have multiple metrics within the visual, but you don't necessarily have to see them all when you first start using the chart. So you can have multiple of them and then enable by every single one of them when you have the necessity for them. All right, that's going to be it for the series configuration, and I'll see you in the next video.